What's up guys, it's Endymion, and today I want to speak about the modern hijacking of intellectual properties by people who hate themselves. So let's talk about the new series Velma and how it, along with others like it, prove that Hollywood doesn't care about these properties but uses them to push messages onto the viewer. And why they ultimately do in the end hate and see you as beneath them. In case you've been avoiding it or have a life, Velma recently released on HBO Max. It's a show about the Scooby-Doo gang in their high school years before they become Mystery Incorporated. It's also one of the most damning and lazy reimaginings I've seen in years. I mean, it's the epitome of the tagline being remade for a modern audience as you can get. But why do people hate it so much? Well, it all kind of falls on the shoulders of one person, that being Mindy Kaling. She's the executive producer of Velma and also voices the character as well. Mindy is also notorious for self-inserting herself in almost every project that she works on. And when she's not on screen, most of the projects that she does, she ends up modeling the main character after herself, which almost always leads to the same character archetype in pretty much every show that she does. That being a South Asian woman lead character who is self-loathing, vengeful, and usually has a morality complex. Velma is very much in line with all of this. I mean, Velma isn't even brown originally. But here, Mindy Kaling decided yet again that the only way she can write a character is for the character to look and literally sound just like her. Not only is it lazy and downright self-absorbed, but it's oftentimes just annoying and overdone. Velma was apparently not even supposed to be based on the characters of Scooby-Doo. The show was originally its own thing, but the studio clearly didn't see anything special or interesting about it. So the only way to salvage the average writing and premise was to do what every modern Hollywood producer does. Find an established intellectual property people actually care about, and then mold it to fit their show. We've seen this plenty of times before with examples like The Witcher at Netflix, where Henry Cavill left because the showrunner Lauren Hisrich deviated too far from the books. Even an ex-writer of The Witcher said that the writing staff openly hated and mocked the source material. Yet even though they disliked it, it still led to these writers not only deviating, but they ruined it even further with their awful lore retconning prequel series, Witcher Blood Origin. And the showrunner Declan de Vera even said that he made Blood Origin to rival the original works of The Witcher, which is hilarious because everyone and their dog hated that show. The point is that these Hollywood executives clearly do not care about the IPs that they ruin. All of this modern audience nonsense only exists to push their politics and messages upon the viewer. And when people resist and then these shows bomb, the executives act like they can't believe it didn't work out.
What's going on? Why don't they like it? We spent $250 million on this!
I mean, in Velma alone, not only is she now a brown girl, but she's also bisexual because of course she is. And Daphne, who's a white redhead bombshell originally, is now an Asian woman because diversity reasons. Not only that, but Daphne is also raised by two mothers because it wasn't enough to just make her a different ethnicity. But the producers needed you to know that this strong female character was also raised with no father figure. By the way, this whole Daphne reimagining is simply done to push a message, and if you can't see the message, it's that you don't need a father to be a strong woman. Which is, but it gets worse. Next we have Shaggy, who isn't called that, but is instead named Norval, and as many recall, Shaggy is kind of the stoner of the group, although he's never really shown doing drugs, which is why it's funny. Why is Shaggy so empty-headed and unworried about everything? Is he high all the time, or is he just really dumb? That's a fun joke you can play with for a long time in many ways. But here, Norval, is a student reporter who makes it very clear how much he hates drugs.
Has no wisdom, just a lot of t-shirts with puns about wine.
Exactly. I think it has something to do with drugs, which I hate.
Which kind of makes Norval nothing like Shaggy and shows that he's just another modern audience reimagining that is less fun than what's come before. And not having Scooby to play off of makes Norval just kind of boring. Finally, we have the only person who is still close to their original version, and that's Fred. Now, this is where I'm going to get a little conspiracy theorist, but it's really weird the more you dive into it. See, Fred in the original cartoons was always confident, strong, and the leader. But here, he's constantly shown as weak and the butt of every joke. Velma will constantly attack Fred, saying that his downstairs is small, that he didn't develop fully, and that he's an idiot who can't do anything for himself. There's even a scene where Velma just openly attacks Fred in the most vile way. Here, watch, and remember that this is what they consider comedy these days.
Fred Jones did not kill those 2 girls. His whole life, Fred has never had to lift a finger to do anything. He's been so pampered, his body hasn't even felt the need to fully mature. I mean, Fred literally can't feed himself.
That's not true. No, you just cut the food and put it on the, what's the dumb thing called? A dingle hopper.
Great. Show us.
Cutties. Mother, cutties.
Oh my god, he is just like a little boy. Exactly.
Was that funny? Why aren't you laughing at what's considered comedy these days? The ironic part, however, is that Velma also has a crush on Fred, and this fascination with degrading and attacking white male characters in a Mindy Kaling show seems to always be present. What's weird is that Mindy Kaling, who like I said often self-inserts herself, will also make her brown girl main characters fall for handsome white men, even though all she does is make fun of and degrade them. I mean, even in real life, Mindy Kaling has 2 kids with a mystery father, although many people believe it could be BJ Novak since they're always seen together. But this just further shows the self-hatred and loathsomeness of these Hollywood and political types. They'll attack and degrade white men in particular at any chance they get, yet they all seem to marry or date exclusively only white men. It's incredibly bizarre to me that your inner self-hatred can manifest in such a weirdly coincidental and creepy way, but that's Hollywood for you, I guess. The sad reality is that shows like Velma wouldn't have nearly the level of attention on them if it was its own series that had no ties to any other franchises, and these producers know it. And it's bizarre how Velma is written to think she's super clever, and the show's attempts at comedy are kind of like what an alien thinks humans would find funny.
You know what 420 is, right?
Yeah. It's code for adults who still watch cartoons.
Or maybe it actually is funny and I'm just going crazy. The annoying part is that we're currently in a golden age of god-awful adaptations of beloved franchises right now. You can't seem to look in any direction without seeing some horrible reimagining of something once beloved. Rings of Power, like Velma, is another example of Hollywood and its activist producers hijacking an IP in order to push messaging down viewers' throats. Rings of Power was a billion-dollar blunder by Amazon that completely reimagined and retconned pivotal pieces of lore within the series.
Immense amount of visual representation and a vast accessibility for every single person in the world to be able to stare at a screen and see a version of themselves staring right back at them.
This was only done because the showrunners wanted that show to be led by a strong female character, and so they chose Galadriel, who never fought in any of the wars that take place during Rings of Power's time period. But none of this matters to the producers because they will move heaven and earth in order to ensure they have a woman in the lead role, even if it makes absolutely no sense lore-wise. On the other hand, we have a faithful adaptation in the form of House of the Dragon, which I recently watched and found it immensely enjoyable, which surprised even me. Dragon, unlike Rings or Velma, actually cares about the source material, and while it too of course will change things, it never once talks down to the viewer, unlike every other show. And the respectfulness of the books not only made House of the Dragon a great show, but it absolutely devoured Rings of Power in terms of viewership and awards as well. Dragon even went on to win the Golden Globe for Best Drama, which surprised even the series creator George R.R. Martin. If anything, House of the Dragon is what Hollywood producers should be striving for, because when you actually care about what you're making and don't hate it like The Witcher or Velma, you get showered in praise and hype. What's hilarious is that Rings of Power actually got 0 nominations at the Golden Globes, to the surprise of nobody. Rings is the poster child for what happens when you disrespect the source material and you end up making a product for nobody. And yet when we look back, it's the faithful adaptations that always do the best. The Harry Potter series, for example, made gangbusters at the box office, and it followed the books very closely. Had the producers just decided to change things dramatically because they wanted to, then the success wouldn't have been anywhere near the same. Then of course you have the holy grail of faithful adaptations in the form of The Lord of the Rings. What's interesting is how different the people behind Rings of Power see the IP compared to someone like Peter Jackson, who made the Oscar-winning trilogy. In Rings of Power, the people involved make it seem like it's Tolkien who's the lucky one to have them wanting to work on his story. Like he should be so happy to have such talented people being willing to use his story to springboard their messages into.
Learn about woman dwarves that we didn't know through your portrayal.
Well, we learned that they exist.
This is necessary. This is a revolutionary moment within our time, and to be the poster child of accessibility for people of colour, for women.
But this is the first time that we see a woman, and the first time that we see a black woman in this area and this world and these works of Tolkien. You know, this is necessary. This is a revolutionary moment.
Whereas when it comes to Peter Jackson, he makes it very clear that he's the fortunate one to be able to tell Tolkien's story.
Have some kind of mechanism, in a sense, so that you could make sure that you were true to Tolkien.
Well, we didn't want to put any of our own, certainly in terms of the thematic material, we didn't want to put any of our own baggage. I mean, we had no interest in putting our messages into this movie, but we thought that we should honor Tolkien by putting his messages into it. And we thought he cared about things. The countryside and the rise of evil, and he cared passionately about certain issues. And we thought what we should do to honor him is to make sure that what he cared about ends up in the movie. That's what we tried to do.
All of this just proves that the creators of today simply do not care about the properties they're working on. Whether it's Scooby-Doo, Lord of the Rings, or whatever else, these shows don't exist for fans. They only exist as political breeding grounds to be mutated to fit agendas. Velma is not Scooby-Doo. I mean, Scooby-Doo isn't even in it. It's just a typical woke propaganda show wearing the skin suit of Scooby-Doo in order to Trojan horse itself into the brains of viewers. Not to mention that Velma takes place in high school, yet the series goes out of its way to sexualize these barely legal characters. What puzzles me the most is that while so many of these shows just keep failing, they just keep coming out. They're like pimples that refuse to leave. For every one you remove, 3 more appear in their place. This bastardization of beloved stories we all love is never going to end until people just stop watching it. And unfortunately, Velma apparently had the biggest debut for an animated series on HBO Max, likely because people wanted to see how bad it was. Things like this continue to exist, and I'm dreading the day Hollywood finally decides to remake classics like Back to the Future. Oh boy, I can't wait for Marty McFly to be remade as Sally McFly, and Doc to be a black gender-fluid non-binary communist who wants to smash the patriarchy and white male privilege. Also, Doc is now lesbian because ESG reasons. Oh my god, I can see it now. In the remake, Sally McFly will go back in time to save Martin Luther King or something. And they'll completely change the point of the movie, and it'll exist just so the producers can pat themselves on the back and say how proud and diverse they are. Ugh. And these Hollywood types clearly don't see an issue, since Rings of Power's producers saw all the negative reactions and decided it wasn't the writing or the producer's faults that it sucked. So they decided to double down by not fixing the writing, but smokescreen the criticism by announcing that Season 2 will have all female directors. What does the gender of the directors have to do with the quality of the show? Stop questioning it, you bigot, and accept the sludge entering your mouth.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
You can't criticize it now because if you do, it's because you hate women. Do you hate Rings of Power or Velma? Well, it's not because they suck and lack any semblance of originality. It's only because you're anti-woman. This self-hatred and radicalization of everything is even leading to small but vocal groups even wanting James Bond of all things to be recast as a female. Because toxic masculinity, and because he's white, and all white men are evil because they're college professors with colored hair said so. I mean, this kind of crap is spilling into the crevices of all entertainment. Did you know that Marvel recently took a fan-made alternate version of Spider-Man and gave it its own miniseries? This new version is called Sun Spider, and it's now a lesbian woman who's also wheelchair-bound. And she webs her wheelchair to her back as she swings around New York City fighting crime. Like, I wish I was kidding. I honestly wish I was clever enough in this moment to make something as hilarious as this, but you simply cannot make this up. She's swinging around New York with her legs that don't work. Wouldn't the momentum of her legs cause her body to shift and make her like fly into walls? And the added touch of having not only a short haircut but a rainbow colored dress is just the icing on the cake. Because nothing matters over identity for these people. I can't believe I'm living in a time where a paraplegic spider thing is swinging through the city using their crutches as web shooters. I'm not even mad about this one, to be honest. It's honestly impressive how condescending and pandering this one is. Also, Sun Spider's real name is Charlotte Weber because remember Charlotte's Web, the book you read as a kid in school? Oh my god, I hate it here. These Hollywood types won't stop until every property we love is ruined. Velma is just the latest in the crusade against the audience, and it most certainly won't be the last. I'm sure HBO and other places are looking at anything and everything they own and trying to find ways to modernize it. Can't wait till they ruin properties like gargoyles or introduce a gender transformer. Oh wait! That's actually happening. That's right, a transformer is going to identify as trans in the newest movie. A literal robot who transforms into a motorcycle apparently will say in the newest movie that it was forged male but identifies as female. You just can't make this stuff up, my friends. Listen, Hollywood definitely hates every one of us and only sees the audience as nothing more than delirious sheep to be catered to. We are all nothing but minds that must accept the woke agenda in order to join the cult. But if you're anything like me, you know BS when you see it and you'll continue to resist this garbage and call it out for what it is. And in the words of Tolkien himself, evil cannot create anything new, they can only corrupt and ruin what good forces have invented or made. And with that, dear viewer, I hope this video has shown you that at its core, the people ruining these franchises simply will never care about the things we love. And in the end, like themselves, Hollywood will never stop hating you.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.